Hello, this is Lewis on August 23rd, 2019. And today I'm going to share with you a little experience I've had with government corruption. Over the past 6 years, I've had lots of experience, and I'm just going to give you one example of something that's pretty clear cut. And government corruption is something you should all be concerned about, even if it doesn't affect you personally, because once the government engages in corruption and you know about it, they will certainly engage in other forms of corruption that you might not be able to learn about. So please pay attention. I'm going to do this in two parts. First, I'm going to give you the quick rundown for those that don't feel like staying for the long, drawn out presentation, and I'll just give you the nuts and bolts. And if you understand it, you can go with that and then leave. And then I'm going to go into it in a little bit more detail. Basically, this presentation is going to focus on the Department of Buildings, DOB for short, and how they scam homeowners, and using propaganda they can get the general public to agree with these tactics of abusing homeowners. They use the ECB, the Environmental Control Board, which is nothing other than a, a New York City ju- judicial setup. It's like a court for the city for certain uh, types of violations that are issued. But it's really a city agency. It's not independent of the city. It's a city agency funded, run by the city, controlled by the city. But it acts like a court, and that's where you adjudicate DOB violations. And the law department, New York City Law Department, so anytime you sue the city, the law department is who defends it. Whether you sue the DOB, the ECB, any other agency, the New NYPD, the law department is going to be involved in defending the city. And so not only am I going to show you how the DOB scams homeowners in one particular instance, I'm going to show you how the ECB and the law department actually help um, the DOB do what they do. So let's get started. And here is a violation that was written against me. We're going to use 19L for short. You see it on the top of your screen here. I will refer to 19L throughout because this is the violation, and this is how we're going to refer to this violation through this presentation. It was issued on 6/13/2013, and it's for an infraction of Building Code 1004.1.2. In a long presentation, I'll go through more of it in detail. But for now, just remember that Building Code 1004.1.2 is what we're focusing on, and it is a Class 1 or immediately hazardous violation. So So here is a brief written by the city. You see Zachary W. Carter, that's the corporate counsel of the city of New York. When I talk about the New York City Law Department, this is who they are. And they wrote this particular brief to the New York State Supreme Court and signed it on November 25th, 2015. And I'm going to show you a couple of excerpts from this brief. Okay, so first, what they're saying is that that particular violation, 19L, it should not have been a violation of 1004.1.2. It should have been a violation of Admin Code 27-2075. Um, in this particular brief, I'm not going to get into it here, but what they're trying to say is that I violated this without being tried or convicted, without going to any tribunal or having any hearing. They've already convicted me of this particular infraction before the court. But that's not really the point for here and now. What we see is that they say that they should have written a violation for this particular piece of code. They acknowledge that the ECB dismissed 19L, that's the violation I showed you earlier, and it should have been 27-2075 instead. And on the next page, they clearly say the notice of violation, which is 19L, which is an infraction of Building Code 1004.1.2, is the wrong provision of administrative code. So right here in black and white, well, actually I have it highlighted in yellow. I'm gonna just enhance this view in case it doesn't show up on the video that clear. The notice of violation had cited the wrong provision of the administrative code. And of course, they're referring to the notice of violation 19L, which alleged a violation of building code subsection 1004.1.2. Okay, now let's go on to the next page. Now, if you see here, what I did was I pulled up all the violations of 1004.1.2 that the Department of Buildings wrote um, over the years. And as you can see, almost 4 years later, they're still issuing violations of 1004.1.2, even though they admit it's wrong. What you'll notice also is that now what they're doing in this section, you see here, they're associating 1004.1.2 with Housing Maintenance Code 27-2075. Okay, and that's a little bizarre in and of itself because they admitted that 1004.1.2 is wrong, and then they saying it should have been 27-2075. So they're saying that that's right. So they're saying one violation is wrong, one violation is right, but they're saying that they're essentially the same thing over here. And notice the date here, 7/30/2019, 7/11/2019. That's recent. They're doing it up until today. Let's take a look at the next screen here, and we see that I've listed these in descending order by violation date, and so I have 79 violations that they issued after they admitted that 1004.1.2 was wrong. They wrote 79 violations of 1004.1.2, and you see that over here, 4/11/16, and that's number 79 in the list. Okay, so that's basically it for the short version. So essentially, you see that they admitted that writing a violation of 1004.1.2 is wrong, but they go ahead and time again, 79 times since they admitted it was wrong, they issued the violations. That's corruption. Okay, and that's the corruption example I have to show you today. Now I'm going to go. If you want to leave at this point, go ahead and leave. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into it in a little bit more detail, so this way you may be able to get a little deeper understanding of what's going on here. So what I'm going to go back to, I'm going to show you some of those screens that I showed you before. And the first one was a DOB violation complaint. So essentially, when the Department of Buildings wants to file a complaint of violation, they issue what's called the notice of violation to the homeowner, NOV for short. And that notice of violation, it initiates a legal process, which gets the ECB involved, and the homeowner can fight this through a hearing before the ECB board. So let's take a further look at, and now you see it in blown portion. I showed you earlier that it was 19L issued 6/13/2013, building code 1004.1.2, class 1 immediately hazardous violation. So this violation is going to initiate the process, and there's going to be a hearing. Now, what they're trying to allege here, in a nutshell, is that I had too many people in the house, and they wrote it as failure to comply with maximum floor area requirements per occupant load. And you can see that that's kind of nonsensical, but the reason why it's nonsensical is because they're trying to fit an inapplicable piece of code into the violation, trying to map the wording to that violation. And essentially what the violation is, it's saying that your egress is no longer able to handle the amount of people that it was supposed to be able to handle, which is it's a little bizarre because that's not, they shouldn't never be writing a violation like that after somebody's been in existence for a long time and after their initial approval. So that was nonsense. Also, they said noted rooms were occupied up to 6 occupants in one bedroom for overnight stay, and that's just purely untrue. There was not 6 occupants in one room. In any case, um, this violation doesn't refer to rooms. It refers to like whole apartments. So it just doesn't make sense, and it's not true to begin with. So what I said essentially is that saying I had too many people in the house. Well, let's go to. Well, I actually have an audio clip of the inspector with my attorney, and my attorney Goldberg is his name. He asked Pugak, "What's the legal capacity of the first floor apartment?" And then he goes and he asks this, "What's the legal capacity of the second floor apartment?" And Pugak essentially answers that he doesn't know. He doesn't give an answer. He doesn't know. So I'll let you hear it. I don't know how clear it's going to be, whether you're going to be able to understand it, but I'm going to play it nonetheless. Here we go. How many people is legally occupied the first? Based on the particulars. How many people? Yeah. Do you have an answer or no? No. How would your answer be the same for the second floor? You don't have an answer. No. Okay, so you heard that Goldberg asked him how many people could legally occupy the first floor apartment based on the configuration. There was a pause. Pugak says, "How many people?" And then the attorney says, "Yes. Do you have an answer?" And then Pugak says, "No." And then he says, "And what about the second floor? You have an answer?" And Pugak again says no. So Pugak doesn't know the legal capacity of either apartment, either the first floor apartment or the second floor apartment. So the fact that he can write a violation is for capacity being exceeded is a little corrupt in and of itself. Well, let's go on. Let's see what happens here. So now we have the hearing, and he makes this testimony at the hearing, and then the environmental control board, they have to write an opinion. So they write an opinion, and that's done after the hearing. And what we're going to see on the next slide is that actual decision that resulted. So here's the decision, and notice that it's, if we go back up to the top, you can see like the official stamp and so forth. But if you notice this part highlighted in yellow, we see that it's adjudicating 19L. You see 19L right here. So they're adjudicating 19L. And then we go to the next page. And here's like the pertinent part of the next page, okay? So you heard the testimony before, and I'm going to actually blow this up a little bit more just so you can see it even more clear. And so it says, Mr. Goldberg asked how many people could legally occupy the first and second floor. So she summarized this question like that. And then she says, the administrative law judge, the IO replied that he visually estimated the square footage. Well, he didn't reply. I mean, you heard the testimony. There's no place in that recording you heard him say that he visually estimated the square footage. At some point in his testimony, he said he visually estimated the square footage, but not in an answer to Goldberg's question, not an answer to that question. And then they said there should be, this is a little bit bizarre too, there should be 200 square feet per occupant in each dwelling unit. And then she said the rooms did not have the square footage. So here there's a little incongruence because she's talking about there should be 200 square feet per occupant in each dwelling unit, which is untrue. And then the rooms did not have the square footage. So you're comparing rooms with dwelling units. Like dwelling units are comprised of rooms, and a room is not a dwelling unit. A room is a subset of a dwelling unit. In any case, it's just an outright lie. I mean, here you go. You heard the testimony. Another judge lied. Pugach didn't know the answer. He didn't. This is not what he replied. That, in my estimation, that should alarm people right away when you see people that are supposed to be honorable and adjudicating fairly an unbiased tribunal, and then they just take the facts and set up a lie. She had access to the recordings. She could have heard the record. She could have listened to the recordings before she wrote this, but she didn't. And then she makes her final opinion here, and I'm going to blow this up again so you can see it. And she says, for all 5 NOVs, I find the written facts as alleged by the issuing officer are legally sufficient. Well, I mean, that's basically, it's impossible finding. You have a violation alleging that capacity was exceeded, and then you have a testimony that says he didn't know what the legal capacity was, and she has no law that gave her that legal capacity. Nowhere here you're going to see that legal capacity. So that, the judge is issuing a finding that is absolutely impossible to come to make that conclusion. And then she says further down, the NOV 19L derived from NOV 18J, which is absolutely nonsensical. They're totally unrelated. One is related to the occupancy capacity, and then the other one's related to the type of occupants. Okay, that's not what happened. Okay, so let's move on, and I'll shrink this back down to a more normal size. Okay, so now I showed you this earlier. The appeal decision excerpt, December 19, 2013. And we actually saw that earlier, so I'm not going to say too much about. We didn't see this earlier, but this was the ECB board's decision that they referred to earlier. This was issued on December 19, 2013, and basically the ECB board dismissed 19L, and that's what we referred to in that brief that Amanda Sue Nichols wrote to the New York State Supreme Court on November 25th, 2015. So here's just how the ECB worded it. They basically said that which was true, that the petitioner, which was Pugach, couldn't make out a violation of BC 1004.1.2. Okay, and then we're going to get to the law submission from State Supreme Court, and here we go, issued November 25th, 2015, and here we go, she convicts me of 27-2075 without even being tried, and tries to get this accepted by the courts. And they admit that ECB dismissed 19L, which is true, and then we go back to our next page, and here's where they admit again, BC 1004.1.2 was the wrong provision of the administrative code. And so what do we know so far? Well, one thing we know is 1004.1.2 is the wrong provision of code to allege overcrowding, and the city knows it. So it's no secret, the city knows it, and that's the way it is. Next thing, Building Code 1004.1.2 is a Class 1 or immediately hazardous violation, and administrative law judges will lie. The city knew 1004.1.2 was wrong, and we know they knew it November 25th, 2015, although I think it was way before that. I mean, it's not hard to infer that they knew long ago. And the city claims that Admin Code 272075 is the correct code to allege overcrowding. Okay, and we saw that in a brief. Okay, And as we saw earlier, the DOB continues to issue admittedly wrong NOVs. I don't know how you take it, but I just see that as extremely bizarre. And again, this screen, we saw this before. Up till last month, 7/30/2019, they could have issued more since I pulled this report. They're still issuing 10.04.1.2, and they're pairing it now with 27-2075. All right, that's number 13 in the list, issued in 2018. I'll blow that up for you just so you can take a look and see that. Okay, 2018, still issuing violations, 13. And we'll go to the next page. That's where I have 79 violations issued since they admitted that the violation was wrong. And then all in all, from all the ones that I pulled up, and I can't find anyone any earlier than 10/1/2008, and that could be because the code was enacted. This particular building code is the 2008 version of the code, and maybe there was a different subsection title before that. I'm not sure. That was the 1968 code. Came before the 2008 code. So all in all, since from the records that I pulled, the records that I detected from my queries, I pulled up 193 NOVs that had that alleged a violation of 10.04.1.2. As you know, as you see here, before my case, they don't include the references to 27-2075. So that was new. After they admitted they're wrong, they plug in the reference to 272075, and maybe you can figure out why. So let's go back and reduce this again, and moving on. Okay, so what is this Administrative Code 27-205? Let's take a look at it. 27-2075 is part of the Housing Maintenance Code, so it's not part of the construction codes. The Department of Buildings usually involves itself with construction issues and changing, altering the physical structure of a building or apartment and things of that nature. And then the Department of Housing Preservation takes care of the housing maintenance to make sure your housing stock is maintained and occupied in a manner that's consistent with the goals of maintaining housing, not to allow houses to become dilapidated and deteriorated condition. Okay, but they can DOB can legally enforce housing maintenance code, and HPD can also write infractions for the building code violations. They can do that. Okay, so let's take a deeper look at this. I'm going to blow this up so that you can get a further understanding of what we're talking about here and what. So here we see the maximum mosquitoes. Maximum permitted occupancy 2075. That's the title of the code. And what we notice here is that for every person occupying an apartment in a Class A or Class B multiple dwelling, or in a tenant-occupied apartment in a 1 or 2 family home, they should have a certain livable area, not less than 80 square feet each. Okay, so multiple dwelling we can discard that because my place was not a multiple dwelling. My place was a two-family house. So that part of the provisional code doesn't apply to me. And the next part, the tenant occupied apartment in a two-family dwelling. Well, I was a two-family dwelling, but the difference between me and here is that I'm an owner-occupied two-family home. And this provision of code only applies to tenant-occupied apartments. So right away, even though they convicted me without a trial or hearing, you can see that the code doesn't apply because I'm an owner-occupied. So aside from that, even if I had applied, uh, even if it was applicable to me, what they were comparing, what they were looking at was square footage of rooms. And what this provision of code says is that you need to measure the total livable floor area of the apartment. In other words, the total livable floor area of the entire dwelling unit, not the rooms. You're not looking at rooms and determining square footage of rooms and seeing how many people could sleep in a room. That's not what this particular code addresses. And notice that children under 4 are excluded. Okay. All right. So let me shrink this up again and move on. All right. One last thing about 27-2075 is that they were supposed to classify these violations back in 1972. So basically, if you see here, 1972, the department, and here they mean by department, they mean the HPD, was to classify violations like of 27-2075, for instance, as non-hazardous, hazardous, and immediately hazardous. And they actually did that, and I can prove that to you if you need the proof. But the point is that the HPD classified these violations, and according to their classification method, they classify non-hazardous as A, hazardous as B, immediately hazardous as C. All right, and then moving on. So here we see, in addition to the DOB violations that I pulled out of 1004.1.2, I pulled up that housing, Department of Housing Preservation and Development, HPD's violations written for 27-2075. And what we see here is, I'll scroll here, the violation class. HPD classifies 27-2075 as hazardous, not immediately hazardous. So 1004.1.2 is immediately hazardous, and 27-2075 is only hazardous. So to equate the two is like comparing apples to oranges. You're comparing like something that's immediately hazardous with something that's hazardous, and it's clear here that HPD classifies these particular violations as hazardous, and you see the same thing on the next page. All right, I pulled up. See, we're up to 98 in this particular slide, and if you notice that at the top, they issue a violation which indicates how the violation should be written, like they specify the number of square feet of the apartment, right? The number of square feet in the entire apartment was 788 square feet. So they say that a maximum number of people permitted is 9 according to the code. So in a 780 square foot apartment, which is not that big, you can have 9 persons there occupying that apartment legally, because 9 times 80 is 720, and 720 is less than 788. So everybody has at least 80 square feet of living area. Now, if you go to 10 times 80 is 800. So naturally 10 people can't legally occupy that space according to this particular code. But the important thing is they're measuring, they indicate the measured space, 788 square feet of living area, which is what the code says, and they say that 9 people are allowed to live there, and they observe 13 adults residing there. So it's clear. It's clear. You have a limit of 9. You have 13. You violated this code unless you come up with something else in the code that makes this code applicable. You see that it's, that's the way the violation should be written, so that you really have a prima facie case against it. On its face, in other words, it looks like there was a violation. The DOB doesn't write it like that. And here's a recent violation that the DOB wrote that alleged 27-2075. So the NOV numbers at the top doesn't really matter that much. Just for your reference, if you want to look it up. It's not mine. They didn't write it against me. I pulled it off the database, and it was dated 5/5/2019. So it's recent. It's this year. And the DOB classified this violation as Class 1, immediately hazardous, and we saw that 27-2075 is only a hazardous class. All right, and there they go, alleging 10.04.1.2. You see that in the description down at the bottom. Let me blow this up just a little bit more so you can actually see that. Blow it up to 200. And then if you couldn't read it before, maybe you can read it now. And notice what's obviously missing here is that they don't specify anything about the square footage. 27-2075 specifically mentions square footage. They don't talk about beds, how many beds you can have in a bedroom, if you can have a bed in the living room or not. It doesn't talk about that stuff. Square footage, number of people, that's all you need. But they, I guess this is part of the propaganda campaign to sell the violation. And I'll shrink that back down. And then, let's go. So what else did we learn here? Well, despite knowing that BC 10.04.1.2 is wrong, the city continues to issue such violations. The city disguises the knowingly wrong use of 10.04.1.2 by pairing it with admin code 27-2075, which has nothing to do with 10.04.1.2. As you saw, the city admitted that 10.04.1.2 was wrong, and that the proper code should be 27-2075 is what should have been alleged. So if one is right and the other one's wrong, it shouldn't be paired. And then 27-2075 is only a hazardous class violation, but the city prosecutes it as an immediately hazardous violation. Now we might wonder about or speculate on the reasons why the city might do this. I mean, I certainly have, and I come up with some possible reasons the city might pair 10.04 with 2075, and this is what I came up with. Here they have 2 chances at security conviction in the administrative court. Okay, so if they can't trick the court into believing that 10.04.1.2 was violated, they can try to trick the court into believing that 27-2075 was violated. So you up your chances. Double jeopardy for the homeowner, by the way. And then, okay, what else can we do? We can prosecute a hazardous violation as an immediately hazardous violation. That allows increased penalties because the penalties are like almost double for immediately hazardous versus hazardous. And then the options for the homeowner are decreased as far as a cure is concerned. And there's also the possibility of securing a vacate order with immediately hazardous violation, the city can secure a vacate order according to provision 28-207.4. They can secure a vacate order, but with a hazardous violation, they don't have any legal grounds to secure that vacate order. So, and vacate order is just another way that the DOB can torture a homeowner, abuse the homeowner. And okay, and another reason I could think of is that the city is covering up the wrongs for prosecuting 193 1004.1.2 NOVs. And why they want to cover this up is because somebody can bring an action against the city to recover damages for everyone that was aggrieved by the city's wrongful prosecution of these violations. And many of those people were found guilty of a violation that was admittedly wrong by the city, and they deserve to be compensated. So that's my presentation here, and I hope that you learned something. And if you appreciate it, let me know. And if you need any more information, if you want any more proofs, if you want to know about other corrupt practices of the city, give me a holler. I'll be more than happy to share whatever I have with you. I have tons of information, tons of evidence. I can prove a lot of what they do. Okay, have a great day, have a great night, depending on where on this planet you're residing right now. And I'm gonna end this meeting. Stop.